Just gone 6:34. A warm welcome to you if you've just tuned into the Monday edition of the AIM Report. I'm Michelle Craig. One of the big stories we're tracking for you this morning, Embattled Health Minister Dr. Zweli Mkhize faced the ANC's Integrity Commission this weekend over the Digital Vibes contract. So far, the minister has denied any wrongdoing, but an eagerly awaited report by the Special Investigations Unit will determine what action is taken against him. Yesterday, the City Press reporting that Mkhize is considering resigning before he is fired by President Cyril Ramaphosa. In a number of countries, health officials were fired for various reasons during the COVID-19 pandemic. So will Mkhize become the latest political casualty of the coronavirus pandemic? Professor Lesiba Tefo joins us now with some analysis on the story. Prof, great to have you with us on the show. As usual, it's such a complicated story, but I mean, so many newspapers are talking about two different scenarios here. The one, that the president is taking too long to act on the health minister and that there is enough evidence outside of the SIU report to act already. But on the other side, that this is actually, it actually fits quite well into the president's agenda in terms of eliminating competition to the presidency. What's your take on these two different takes on the story?
Good morning. You just made a good point that in other parts of the world, things would be otherwise.
Yep.
In China, a corrupt politician would be killed. In Europe, a corrupt politician will be jailed. In Africa, a corrupt politician is elevated to a higher office. Hence, we are where we are. It's less about Ramaphosa than about Zweli Mkhize. Why wouldn't he make it easy for his own comrade, whom he's fairly close to step down or to step aside, whichever is more convenient for him? And there is a precedent in this regard. And there is one person we tend to forget who really impressed me several years back, the deputy SARS commissioner, I think by the name of Mahashule. He was the first to set the tone for me, at least in my country. Then we had former Minister Nene, right? We have also former Minister Paulo Jordan. Just do the right thing and fall on your sword. History will judge you favorably than when you are to be forced out of office. He's complicating Ramaphosa's life, undoubtedly, his political life, so to speak, because either way it goes, Ramaphosa is going to be the loser. If he fires him, right, or politely persuades him to step aside, perhaps that would be better. But I don't see it being that easy, because the man is said to be mobilizing, unfortunately, along ethnic extraction in KwaZulu-Natal. If the papers of yesterday are anything to go by, he's pleading guilty, innocence, and he feels he's been victimized. And it is alleged that he says Ramaphosa doesn't want any competition, hence he's trying to remove any potential threat out of his way.
But I mean, be that as it may, Prof, even if that is true, what you're saying is that even outside of the SIU finalizing its report, it says it will have that report by the end of June. None of these issues are stopping the minister himself, if I'm hearing you, from doing what is the right thing here.
I think if you remember the night on which the former president resigned, and I was at the Union building then, around 9 o'clock, he wanted to stay on. He called a press conference. An hour thereafter, then he called the second conference to step aside. I'm saying here, depending on how much he's likely to lose, he will hold on to office, hoping that things will turn otherwise, unless there is much at stake and there is much to lose. He may then in fact, resign. I'm speaking about the benefits. I'm speaking about political ambition, if there is still any, because the man still has presidential ambitions. So he might stick around for some time, but equally, he might be persuaded by those closest to him and so, but it is not typical of Africans, certainly not on the African continent.
I mean, let's look at the context of how this is playing out in South Africa, Prof. It's in the midst of a third wave of infections in our country, a stalled vaccine rollout plan, 1.3 million vaccines administered so far, well short of what our goal was when we started our vaccine drive. It's in the midst of the biggest corruption scandal coming from COVID-19 funds that were meant to provide PPE for our frontline workers, that were meant to ultimately save lives in our country. And on the sidelines of all of this, we're talking about this kind of political wrangling.
Are you surprised? I'm sure many wouldn't be. Where money is, you can almost predict a priori what is likely to happen. We haven't done well, even in terms of communication on this, even administering the vaccine, we haven't done well. And I don't think it would be a loss to have him out of the space. As a government, we have not just done well. Even some smaller countries on the continent have performed fairly well. And ironically, there is a policy of face the West and ignore the East, even if the best could come from the East. Well, they know better than I do why it is so. We could have done better. We could have gotten as many vaccines and we could have administered them. But yes, we are not there. Yes, the office or the ministry, the department hasn't covered itself in glory according to my assessment. And I say, as people say, he cannot step down in the midst of that. I say, there are many. And my view is not a very complicated one. President Ramaphosa wanted to reduce the size of the executive. That's what he punted prior to making the announcement of his executive. One has passed on, sadly, that's Jackson. He got a replacement, but not also a replacement. That's good for me. Then there is an instance where this one steps aside. Again, a replacement without a replacement. I have in mind here Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, who did a sterling job as a minister that consolidated the ministries. By attrition, through attrition, by the help of attrition, he can still achieve at least a smaller executive, time permitting.
Your final comments, Prof, you've, I think, made it quite clear around your assessment of the health minister's handling of the pandemic so far. In terms of the president himself, I mean, do you still agree that this is a blow to at least Cyril Ramaphosa's camp, given that the president is still trying to push this agenda that his government is that of clean governance, that his government is that of fighting corruption? I mean, we've spoken to the president as the media in forums that are, you know, I think once this past week, parliamentary journalists were able to speak to him. But in general, we hear from the president when he's holding his so-called COVID-19 family meetings. President Cyril Ramaphosa and his handling of the pandemic so far. What is your score for that?
Yeah. In all fairness to him, I don't think he also believes in what he's saying, because he has been around in the past 27 years. Once upon a time, by the way, there was a man by the name of Nelson Mandela. In one of the debates, he said to all and sundry, when we take over, the gravy train will be over. When we take over, the corruption that is in the National Party will be something of the past. And we are even going to cut our salaries. I'm sure some of you still remember that. Where are we today? By day, inch by inch, day by day, the situation is getting worse. And Ramaphosa cannot dispute that. And the wish is there, right? Is the ideals to strive for. I agree with you. The ideal to strive for. But realism tells me, not in my lifetime, not in his lifetime, certainly not through the current ANC, perhaps under a reborn, revamped reimagined and refashioned ANC, we might realize that ideal. But for now, yes, I'm sorry. I mean, I'm not an Afro-pessimist, but Africa has disappointed a lot in the past 60 years, and South Africa is one of the whole.
Sure. Strong words there, Prof, and I'm sure many South Africans listening to what you're saying would agree with you. Professor Lesiba Tefo there, as we continue to unpack the political developments and, of course, the developments insofar as our fight against the COVID-19 pandemic continues here in the country. Our health minister now caught up in a COVID-19 scandal.